All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Amy Kuth, and I am a patient educator within the Stephen and Barbara Slaggie Family Cancer Education Center at Mayo Clinic. I will be the one moderating this session. This is part 5 of our 5-part Cancer and Spiritual Wellbeing webinar series. The topic for today's webinar is Try This, Using Your Spirituality for Wellbeing. We want people on the webinar to know that this session is being recorded so that individuals who aren't able to join us live for this session can still watch it later. For those who would like to view this webinar again, the recordings take about 3 days to be edited and put on the Video Library tab on our Cancer Education page on Mayo Clinic Connect. Mayo Clinic Connect is a digital platform where patients, family members, and caregivers can connect, get evidence-based information, and get access to information about classes and webinars that our center offers. We encourage you to follow our cancer education blog on Mayo Clinic Connect so that you can stay up to date on education opportunities. And in a moment, I will put a link to our cancer education blog in the chat. We will take questions at the end of the session. If you have questions related to the webinar today, please just type them into the Q&A function that you will find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. With that, I will now hand it over to Corinne Thul, who is a chaplain at Mayo Clinic, and she will be giving our presentation today. Take it away, Corinne.
Well, hello everyone, and again, thank you for joining. Spirituality is such an important aspect of our lives, um, and I think today the order we're going to deal with things, just to be real, we're going to deal with some of the harder stuff first because, I mean, if you or your loved one is dealing with a cancer diagnosis, that's just hard, and I'm so sorry that reality is yours right now. I don't know one person who uh, hasn't had their life touched by a cancer diagnosis. And so, um, yeah, um, and we'll get to maybe what would be some fun stuff too as we go along. Some of you may be familiar with Dr. Ira Byock. He um, he worked with hospice for a long time, and he wrote a book, and it was called Dying Well. And when he wrote this book, he had noticed that just 4 things really mattered to people as they're dying, and you can say them in 11 words. Please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. And I love you. But he's kind of funny when he talks about it because he kind of had a um, face palm in his or head slap moment or something where he said that's not actually just what's important if you're dying. It's actually the 4 things that matter most in living. And so he kind of rewrote the book not for end of life, but just so that you could live your life as fully and with as little kind of unnecessary pain and struggle. Um, and I think how these both highlight the importance of speaking about things that maybe are hard, um, and maybe sometimes we take things for granted, right? Love. But talking about love is a beautiful thing. And hearing those words can be very important. Um, yeah. So I offer this up first because how it can ground us in what really, really matters, whether we have a good prognosis or a rough one with our cancer diagnosis. And my buttons aren't working. I'm going to try again. Okay, there we go. And then one of my favorite people, may he rest in peace, as Mr. Rogers. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Anything's that anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. When we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. The people we trust with that important talk can help us know that we are not alone. I remember in the movie with Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, I just cried when he kind of was the only one who brought up death at the bedside of the dying mother of the reporter that they were visiting. And sometimes we need to say hard things. And the last of the kind of real hard, heavy hitting hard things is sometimes if we're hurting, and well, we can end up with anger. That's a pretty normal thing uh, for people who have a cancer diagnosis. And if we can understand our emotions that are related to anger, um, that actually exploring that can be a spiritual practice. I don't know if you've ever seen, and it seems a little blurry on my screen, but the Gottman Institute has this beautiful anger iceberg, and it talks about all these other emotions that really exist in that bigger part of the iceberg. So the bigger part of anger isn't the anger itself usually, it's all these other hard emotions. And if we can talk about those things, I'm worried. I don't know what the future will bring. Or I'm really, really sad. Or I feel all alone. Or I'm dealing with this with friends right now. We want more time together. Um, yeah. If if when it might not exactly come out as anger, I mean that might be too big of a word, although it might not be. If we can just identify some of the emotion underneath it, that could give us some really important topics for conversation with people we trust, who love us, and who we love. So, try this, I guess. Talking about the hard emotions can be a really meaningful part of our own spirituality and to help us to face the realities of our lives. All right. We'll get to what might be more of a positive approach. Douglas Wood, he's one of my favorite authors, and he writes a lot of books. He's a Minnesota guy, and he writes a lot of books that have reflections on nature that he kind of uses as a life lesson. And one day he was hiking in the north woods of Minnesota and he noticed that there were spider webs everywhere. And he just hadn't noticed this before. But that morning they were all glinting with sunlight because the dew was just all over them. But he was in kind of a rough mood that day. And he noticed that some spider webs over here had been blown apart by the wind. And a hiker like him could march through and destroy all the rest of them. And he was kind of feeling like, what's the point of life? Right. So he was in a downward spiral. But in his own imagination, he heard a spider, the web maker itself, talking to him. And this is the wisdom the spider had. They are happiest who are tied at many levels and in many ways to the world around them. Expand yourself, says the spinner. Grow, reach, risk, invest, incorporate more of the universe into your world. Spin, spin. I call this wisdom because we have a very strong instinct when we're hurting or if we're grieving, and a cancer diagnosis, of course, can bring both, to withdraw and to shut down. And that leaves some of the most important life giving connections to us less available. And here the spider says the answer isn't then if one connection isn't strong enough, right? Um, we don't just withdraw and not connect at all. But instead, the idea is to connect and connect and connect. And that the larger number of spiritual connections are what is going to kind of give us the stability and the strength that we need, um, the meaning and purpose in our lives. Oh, and I forgot to put the quote up while I was reading it. I apologize. um, the answer is the opposite, right? Is to connect more and to connect more. Or sometimes if we've withdrawn or shut down, it's to reconnect to those life-giving spiritual connections. Now, because the spider web imagery gets a little weird at this point, every metaphor is limited. We're going to switch metaphors to the redwood trees of Northern California. Oh, I love the redwood trees. Um, I learned some really wild details about them. They can be easily 200, even 300 feet tall, but their root systems are only 12 to 15 feet deep. And I can't do some kind of math calculation. My maths and physics are not that strong, but it seems like there would be too much mass of that tree above ground and not enough below ground to hold that tree in place. But we can see in that second kind of drawing that the roots of these redwood trees are intertwined with one another. And if forces are going to push and try to knock a tree over, the tree next to it is going to kind of help hold it up, and they're going to hold the next one up a little bit. And I just love this idea. I heard the phrase that the redwood trees are holding hands underground. We each have meaningful relationships, people in our lives. We might have strong values or principles. We might have a faith tradition. Um, we might have connections to um, different activities or music, all sorts of different life giving connections that really help us live, stand strong and tall like the redwood tree as who we are, and live a life of meaning and purpose. And so, one way that we might think about what could we try to strengthen our spirituality and use it for our own well being, even when we or our loved one has a cancer diagnosis, we might think of ourselves as the redwood tree. In this little worksheet, you could make a worksheet like this if you have some paper and a pen or pen. Um, it's an aerial view, and you are that redwood tree in the center. And each of those other circles or ovals, I guess they are, could be what are your spiritual connections? And you may have relationships. So, family might fill one of those circles, friends might fill another of those circles. You may have values or principles that guide your life, or if you're a person who's religious, those values and principles might um, be held within your religious faith tradition. You might enjoy nature and connecting with all things, earth and sky and sea. You may have had work, you may still have work or volunteering that is meaningful or has been meaningful in the past. And you may have different hobbies. I need to put music on this one because I feel like music is so transformative. Um, that would be good on there as well. One way we can think about evaluating um, if our spiritual connections are serving us, or if in our instinct to withdraw and shut down in our not feeling well or in our grief over our diagnosis, um, we can think about the current strength of a connection and think about it in context of the past strength. Now, that might not make strength sense. I'm going to put another slide up. If we draw a line from each different, or to show the strength of each connection, um, these are some, I'm going to come back to this slide and instead show you this one first, I think. Here on this page, that this would be maybe one that would be true for me. Um, I think my family relationships have been stronger in the past. You can see that there's two lines, but one of them is a dashed or dotted line. Um, so I think that used to be a very strong connection for me, for my own spirituality and living my life with meaning and purpose. But some people have moved, and also the pandemic made it more difficult to see people. And it's just been weakened because we aren't exactly taking the steps that we need to nurture and foster those family relationships in the same way that used to be really easy. And I guess I kind of took for granted. I think for a lot of people, maybe their faith or their values kind of take a hit. This isn't what I thought it was all about, or it shouldn't be this way. And that's a pretty normal thing, also. Sometimes, even if a person's faith takes a hit, it grows in other ways. So that's kind of an interesting one. Um, here, I have meditation with exclamation points. This is a potential connection for me. I don't do it enough, um, but I have found a particular meditation called loving kindness meditation to be a really powerful meditation if I do it. In loving kindness meditation, you're invited to give some love, just to direct it in your mind to four different people. And the first one is actually yourself, and then someone that you know well and love. The third person would be someone you know but not well, an acquaintance maybe. And the fourth person is someone you might even be having a little tension with. And it can just be transformative. But it turns out I haven't been doing that so much in my life. And so here I'm indicating that for my own spirituality and for my well being, um, it would be really good to be adding that in, and strengthening this as, or kind of building it. I'd have to be building it now as a practice. Um, Here, I've not been cut off from nature, but that would be something that the nature, you'd see this nature connection has a line that maybe that nature hasn't been a possibility recently. Sometimes we have, that was, I think I made this in the middle of the winter and I just wasn't having it. I wasn't going out in 20-degree below zero weather, right? But maybe when we have a cancer diagnosis, what would fit in that circle is maybe my work isn't fully available to me or available at all right now. And that can be a, that can be a challenging thing. When we still put it here on our worksheet, though, we might think, in what ways was my work meaningful to me? Maybe there were social connections with people at work, and finding ways to stay connected in some way to some of those friends might be a possibility. Perhaps making a contribution to the world, and feeling satisfied with that, and finding a new way or different way to make those types of contributions might be hard. Um, or, yeah, sometimes we just want to do what we've done before. So change can really be a challenge there. Um, but we all have power in our lives to make a difference. I think about family and friends. I'll speak a little bit about friends here. In this diagram, I have that friends have reached out to me, but you see the line doesn't go all the way to me. And sometimes I've put my friends off. During the last year of the pandemic, I actually did this. I did a lot of self isolating and withdrawing. And so here I'm recognizing that part of my not connecting with friends has been that I bear some responsibility for that. And it's a very common instinct. It's just not very helpful because those friendship relationships aren't available to be strengthening me. The other thing that's really important to think about is that in life, a very powerful aspect of being who we are is adding the goodness, the love, and the caring that only we can add in life. And our love and caring is good for the people we give it to, but actually it's also very important to our self-understanding, to who we understand ourselves to be in the world. Sometimes when we are withdrawing and isolating, or if we're feeling sick, then maybe we're identified as the patient and everyone's checking on us. And the mutuality of relationship can be a little bit thrown off. And in this type of situation, when we shift gears and just begin to love and support and care for the people in our lives, that can feel really satisfying and like we're making the contribution that the unique contribution only we can add in this world. Sometimes in a class I teach at our pain rehabilitation center, I say, take your calendar out. So try this. Take out your calendar. And sometime when you're going to have some free time, just put on there, find somebody to love. You have people you care about. Maybe there's people you haven't connected with in a long time. Wow, what if you wrote them a note card or a letter, called them up out of the blue? You wouldn't even really have to talk about what's going on in your life. you could just focus on sharing some love and care with them, reconnecting, and just delighting in that relationship. It's a beautiful thing to be who we are, to love the people we love, and to see people experiencing the love and the nurture that we offer. I feel like I don't know if I should pause right here. Amy, what do you think? Would this be an okay pause time?
It certainly can be, if you would like to, Corinne, if there are other things that you would like to share. We do have a little bit of time if you would like to as well. Otherwise, we can
Okay.
go into the question and answer.
Okay. We won't go quite yet. I'm going to back up one slide. I think this was a little confusing in how I put it together. I'll go back 2 slides. So if this is your blank worksheet, right, and you're trying to think about what are your connections, and some might be strong or gotten weakened or faded. One way, that's the one I had on friendship, something that's unavailable, and or something that's potential. So this is just a little key, and the key isn't the main thing. The main thing is to think about what is the current state of your spiritual connections. And so um, when a connection has been weakened or sometimes faded so that it doesn't even seem to exist anymore, right? Um, Rebuilding that or strengthening it is important. And we can put together a plan just to do that. So, um, yeah. And so that's just a way to think about um, what areas need attention. And then if you would have some idea, whether you make a worksheet or not, of areas that you do want to strengthen or new things that you'd like to add in, you just kind of make a plan. And when I encourage people to make a plan, I want a really generous and gracious plan because sometimes, now because I'm a chaplain and before that was a pastor, I always hear people say, I'm going to read the Bible in a year. And I'm not opposed to someone reading the Bible in a year, but almost everyone I know, myself included, trying to read the Bible in a year, it does not go great. It is a very demanding practice. And then you feel like you failed, and then it's hard to have grace for yourself. And so, if whatever practice you might set up, I'm going to um, read from the holy books of my tradition 3 times a week. And I'm going to take one section and I'm going to read until something catches my attention. And then I'm going to pause and just think about that until next time I read. So that's kind of the idea about setting up a gracious plan for yourself. The other thing I think worth saying is that sometimes we just are feeling kind of low or depressed. And because we are feeling a little low or depressed, we just have this little speed bump and it's keeping us from starting doing something. I lived this the whole last year, so I know about it. And just recently, making some things with a friend for her daughter's bridal shower just got me so excited about my art again. I do some fused glass. And so, working with building a friendship and doing a project that I wanted to really helped me to jump back into it. And we can get started even if we don't feel like starting. Does that make sense? When we're 11, we do our homework because mom and dad make us. As adults, sometimes we're just like, and so we don't do something. But actually, if we can be like that parental encouragement and just say, okay, you just kind of have this meh feeling about life, it doesn't mean calling your friend or going to that activity wouldn't be really wonderful. It just means that you've got to get over that initial hesitation because sometimes we just have a little bit of an attitude in the way. And almost always, when we start something that we know is good for our spirit, we're just so glad that we started. And so it's kind of worth working against that um, initial hesitation. Okay, now I think we could go to questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Corinne, for that wonderful presentation. A lot of things to think about and reflect on there. I especially appreciated the depth of the spiritual connections exercise, not only identifying, what is it that that I want to connect to, or what are my current connections, but what type of connection um, is the current status of where that's at in my life. So thank you for that. And the idea of a generous plan as we create realistic goals, of course, is always good advice. So at this time, we will move into our Q&A portion of the presentation. So if you have any questions, what you'll do is you'll just type those questions into the Q&A function that you'll find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So I will just kind of pause for a moment and allow people to type in any questions that they have, and then we will hopefully get all of your questions answered.
And
And
while we maybe are waiting
yeah.
for some questions to come, I have, I want to emphasize also. Um, so I said, love the people you love. That's a good thing to do, is do the loving thing. But also, sometimes when we're hurting, um, we want to ask for love, but we feel like we don't want to ask for love. Or like somehow, if we ask, that's different than if just people know we need it and offer it. Um, but I have this funny story about my dog. Actually, my dog Huey. He's a little love, and he has a doorbell that he can ring. And he has three reasons he rings the doorbell. Mostly, I got it so he can ask to go outside. But he also rings it to ask for food and water. But the number one reason he rings the doorbell is, well, and I ask him, I'm like, okay, show me what you want. And he'll walk not to the door, but around the table in the front room. And then he'll just stand by the chair I sit in the most. And he is presenting himself to be loved. We share something that we call scoods, and it means you got to scratch kind of vigorously by his ears, but go all the way down to his tail. And you say, it's so good, so good, so good, 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 good. And it's a silly story, but actually it's really beautiful. He does that regularly, saying, I need some love here. And we can do that with the people around us too. It's a very fine thing to ask for the love.
That's a wonderful story, Corinne. Thank you for sharing that. All right, we do have a couple of questions coming in here now. So this person is wondering, are there ways to help someone reclaim or remember a forgotten connection? Ways you've helped people explore that strength of connection category?
I think it's really tricky. Sometimes I think, so in this screen where the friends reached out to me and I didn't reciprocate, it it's often early on that friends reach out, but if you get put off so often, you just don't know what to do anymore. And a lot of times then friends just throw their hands up. They don't know what to do and they might quit reaching out. And what I would say is that it doesn't mean that those friends don't care. It's not a great answer. They just don't know what to do. And I think meaningful relationships have a depth to them, even if there's been some distance in the most recent history. So, if, I mean, we've all heard someone talk about, we reconnected and it was like no time had passed. It's a real thing. Um, I encourage this a lot at my with my pain rehab classes, and I'll hear people say, "I called my buddy last night. It was like no time had passed." And they had been feeling forgotten and ignored and neglected, but the richness of that relationship ran deeper than the emotions surrounding the awkwardness of what not knowing what to do, or how to reach out, or how to, you know maybe later they could talk about, yeah, I didn't know what to do, I feel really bad, and I felt so lonely, but I think trusting that connection can, and then when that connection gets rekindled, then you could talk about the hard part, if that's necessary. I don't know if that answers the question.
All right. Thank you, Corinne. Couple other questions here. Let's see. I heard that practicing mindfulness could help cancer patients manage symptoms and reduce stress. Is mindfulness considered a form of spirituality?
It 100% is, and thank you. I get so nervous and excited, and I have too much to present, and then I skip things that would have been really helpful. And we were going to practice a few things here, and actually, we could do that right now. We could just do mindfulness on the breath, just to inhale kind of deeply and try to exhale a little bit slower than we inhaled, and to maybe do 5 breaths. So I'll do 5 breaths here. Everybody, let's just do 5 breaths and just focus on your body, breathing in and breathing out. So in my own body, particularly when I exhale, I felt tension just melting away. Something that simple. Um, it feels so calm. Look, that took half a minute, maybe. Well, I don't know how long it took, a few seconds. And the calming and centering that mindfulness can bring is amazing. And we can be mindful about almost anything, except like probably not our cell phones. We're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling on there, right? I mean, less news, more music, or slowing down in nature, right? To say, I'm going to go walking. I'm not going to carry my phone with me at all. And I'm going to see what I can notice on my walk. And you might say, there's like 17 types of birds calling stuff out here with different songs. Um, your morning coffee. You could say, I'm not reading any news. I'm just going to sit here with my coffee on the porch. Oh, um, you might, sometimes I've actually done a little head massage on myself. That might seem funny, and I'm not going to do it right now for you in the screen, but it's really lovely. You don't have any idea how much tension, or I didn't, I hold in my face. And to just massage that jaw and to massage those temples and just the whole scalp. Ooh. And then to notice the difference between being really relaxed and like my status quo. So then it really encourages me to really work at finding moments when I can just recenter myself. Mindfulness is a very, very powerful tool, not just for cancer patients, but of course, yeah, very much so. Um, and then a loving kindness meditation is a beautiful one. Uh, it's more of a meditation than a mindfulness, but it puts the love of people into your mind, and that's always I can't say enough about that.
Wonderful. Well, thank
Amy,
you for
you know a lot about mindfulness. You might have
I
something to say.
I do. I really appreciated that you took us through that exercise and gave some other specific examples as well, because you're right, mindfulness can be practiced in so many different ways, and it's amazing what even just 5 breaths or even just one simple breath in and out. It's amazing what that moment of mindfulness can do for us in that moment. So thank you for your words of wisdom on mindfulness. And I did just want to add to that that we do actually, if you're a Mayo Clinic patient, we offer a mindfulness class through our Cancer Education Center. We offer both virtual classes that you can just take on Zoom from your home, as well as in person. If you click on the link that I sent in the chat, that will take you to our Mayo Clinic Cancer Center Education blog. And if you go to the Classes and Resources tab, you'll see all the offerings that we have right now. So these webinars are on there, our classes are on there. And for the classes, you just would need to ask your Mayo Clinic provider for a referral, and they can schedule that class for you. If you're not a Mayo Clinic patient, there's lots of opportunities to learn mindfulness out there. a lot of communities have uh, different classes that can be taken. There are online classes through like mindfulness-based stress reduction is a program that's readily available. So if you just kind of do a Google search, mindfulness classes or programs in my area, that could be a way potentially if you're not a Mayo Clinic patient to still explore and have a little bit of guidance with that as well. Of course, or just talk to your provider at your facility and see what kind of recommendations or resources they have available on that topic. Um, so one other question we had come through, this person has mentions they have really enjoyed these webinars. They have been to all 5 of them, and wondering if we could just share a little bit more about what chaplains do at Mayo Clinic, how they could meet with one. And then I'll just kind of add to that, Corinne, if somebody's not a Mayo Clinic patient, how might somebody be able to connect with or find a chaplain or a spiritual guide outside of Mayo Clinic, or even if they don't belong to a church?
Yeah. Chaplains meet with patients, loved ones, and staff, um, kind of talking about where their beliefs about life or values um, meet what they're experiencing. And sometimes there can be some tensions or struggles there. Um, Other times, well, we can forget, like in this um, redwood tree analogy, we can forget to utilize some of our most important spiritual strengths just because the chaos of everything that's going on around us. And so we do a lot of kind of listening, and um, sometimes people are learning new things and we walk with them through that. Sometimes they're rediscovering some old spiritual connections and strengths of their own. And yeah, so we come from a very accepting point of view. A chaplain has special training to support a person according to their own values and principles or faith, not in any way trying to dictate the chaplain's spirituality on the patient or loved one. So, out in, if you're not here at Mayo, right, spiritual leaders have a lot of wisdom, but also counselors and therapists deal with a lot of spiritual topics. And sometimes we're a little bit hesitant to reach out to a counselor or therapist, but oh my goodness, no one is made to get through life without some support and encouragement, and you are deserving of the support and encouragement that you need, especially if you're feeling like your spirituality needs some strengthening, and if you need that encouragement right now. So those would be some ideas for some spiritual support. Um,
Excellent.
yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to note, I did have somebody state that their chat says disabled. Um, and I'm guessing that means that perhaps maybe you can't see the link that I sent through that gets you to the Mayo Clinic Cancer Education blog. So I apologize if for some reason you aren't able to access that. I was under the impression that you guys were able to see that on your end. So if for some reason you aren't able to see that, another easy way you could get to it is just go to your web browser into the search field and just type in Mayo Clinic Connect. So it's Mayo Clinic, CONNECT, and that should take you to a link that takes you to the homepage of Mayo Clinic Connect. And then if you click on where it says blogs and podcasts, that's where you'll find us. So if you go about halfway down the page on the left-hand side, there's a cancer education page there as well. So hopefully if you aren't able to see it in your chat, you can find it just kind of by searching it on the internet as well. So that is something that is available wherever you are. It's an external site. So of course, if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to us here at the Cancer Education Center, and we can give you some more guidance on how to find us as well. So I don't see any other questions coming through on the Q&A, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this session. So I would just like to say thank you to everybody for participating. Um, And again, you can find information about our upcoming classes and webinars on our cancer education page on Mayo Clinic Connect. That's where you can also go to see our or to view the recording of this video once it's posted in our video library. And when this webinar has ended, you'll be prompted to take a quick survey. We appreciate your willingness to fill out this survey as your feedback is helpful to ensure that we are offering educational opportunities that are valuable to you. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.